Welcome to the Upshot Interview Series. This is episode number 14. And today we're joined by legendary course designer John Houck. He designed the original W.R. Jackson layout that will be in play for the Champions Cup coming up this weekend, first major of the season. And Josh, this is a fascinating interview with somebody who has been at the forefront of thinking about what the future of courses needs to be. And he has some insight into how he's thinking about things differently, what his course design philosophy is, and where we need to be going when we think about developing courses that are not just good courses, but are also good for spectators, which is not something that was historically thought about.
Every interview series, I'm convinced that I'm going to get a letdown eventually, and it just doesn't happen. It just continues to get better. He has so much insight and answers questions that, you and I have talked critically about for several episodes during my time here on the Upshot, and gives, I think, some real insightful comments about the way that we need to address course design with players improving, with skills changing, and with the goals and objectives of the game, i.e. in venues and spectatorship, that you've discussed have to change as well. And I think it was a remarkable interview that discusses some of those factors.
Well, we hope you enjoy it. John Houck of Houck Design will join us next. We'll be right back. The Upshot is presented by Pound Disc Golf, makers of the best bags in the sport. And you know what? They make more than just disc golf bags. Check out their new Fly Pack. You can find it on the website, pounddiscgolf.com. It is the maximum carry-on size travel pack that you've been looking for. Backpack straps, or you can take those off and convert it into a duffel. It's got room for a laptop, a tablet, your clothes, your stuff, and you know what? Some disc golf discs, because obviously you're going to bring some on vacation. $299.99, and it's just a beautiful bag. You got to check it out. It's available in multiple colorways. Go to pounddiscgolf.com to check out the Fly Pack so that you can travel in style. Joining us now on the Upshot Interview Series is John Houck. He's the owner of Houck Design, a disc golf design company, and has designed more disc golf courses than you've probably played. John, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Charlie. Good to be here. Good to see you, Josh.
Well, we really appreciate having you. You're here this week because you're the designer of W.R. Jackson, which will be the site for this weekend's Champions Cup 4-round major at the home of the PDGA in Appling, Georgia. And so perhaps it's a great place to start. Tell us a little bit about the design of this W.R. Jackson course, when you put it in the ground, and just that process of being asked by the PDGA to come and create that course.
Sure. I think we go back to 2005 when we started. It was actually, most people don't know, called the National Disc Golf Center at that time. And we started out by reviewing the whole site. The PDGA was still in the process of working out the long-term lease with Columbia County, but we were pretty sure, where the buildings were going to go and where the courses were going to go. So it was a little more than a 2-year process, and we opened in April of 2007. So it's 15 years this month, and it was a big project. The goal of the complex was to create something that people hadn't seen before, to be a premier destination for the sport. And my course in particular, I really remember Brian Graham, who headed up everything at the time, saying, look, this is about innovating. Let's go big. Let's do things that people hadn't seen before. And I think that little extra push really was a good thing for me. And in the long run, I really feel like this course was kind of a turning point in my career. I tried a lot of things that I hadn't tried before, and over the next 10 years refined all those techniques. But this particular one, it was a lot of firsts, and of course, very happy with how it turned out.
So tell us about the layout and the course itself, and kind of the challenge that it brings to players, and how you designed it in order to incorporate and make sure it had that challenge.
Well, there are a lot of things involved, and I think a good place to start, I was doing my research, and the last big event on this course, we have to go back to 2019, pre-lockdown, for the Hall of Fame Classic in the fall. And as I went through, watching some of the coverage, Nate Sexton said something that I think is really insightful. It was on hole 10 actually, and he said, "Look at this. This player made a perfect drive, and that's the thing about W.R. Jackson. You make a perfect drive, and you still have a lot of work to do." And that was really part of it, right? I want on the par fours for people to have to make 2 good shots to even have a look at birdie. And just to be clear, because I don't want anybody, looking at their home course and saying, "Well, perfect drive still has work to do. I guess we're doing the right thing." That's just the tip of the iceberg. The point is, a good drive has to get good options. A better drive gets better options, and the best drive gets the best options. But nobody ever gets to a point where their drive is so good that they're going to have an easy up and down. I think, work to do is still a good way to put it. It always takes 2 good shots to make it happen. And of course, there's a lot more that goes into it than that. But this was really, for me, the first place where I really started focusing on giving players more options off the tee, more options on the approach shot. So it wasn't just about the challenge and making people execute. It's about bringing strategy into the game.
So, John, I'm curious from a design perspective then at W.R. Jackson. You talked about this being a turning point in your career, and that you tried some things in that course design that you hadn't really done before. What were some of those things that you did at W.R. Jackson that were, for you, groundbreaking at the time?
Well, I think the most obvious one was that at the time, and I think it still stands up, this was the widest course in the woods that certainly I had ever seen. And I'll never forget one of the early reviewers on some website saying, "Well, I don't know, you could drive a truck through some of the fairways." Like, really, is that a bad thing for a par 68 course in the woods? Is it really that bad? Because trust me, people still manage to miss it. So that was a big one. And one of the great results of that was that grass started growing spontaneously, which doesn't normally happen in the woods. I had never seen it before, but there was enough light coming in that we started getting grassy fairways, and we were really excited about that. But to give people options and how you balance the options, making sure that any good drive or better drive or best drive is going to have good looks to get to the pin. Making sure that the distances were appropriate was a big deal. This is the only course I've ever done that was strictly made for gold level players. This course was made to test the best of the best. And of course, this was 2007, so the best kept getting better and better. So when we got to Pro Worlds in 2017, we made some adjustments and made some holes a little longer, made the angles a little trickier. And of course, the players continue to develop, and I hope that someday we'll get to update it a little more. This is also the first place where I made par 5s that had a well-defined 3-shot route, as well as a separate, well-defined 2-shot route. so that, eagle was an opportunity, but you had to make, again, 2 great shots. And anybody who didn't want to take that chance still had to make 3 really good shots to even have a look at birdie. So those are some of the main things. And I think another, I wouldn't say that this was the first, but you'll notice at W.R. Jackson, and this is true at Sela Ranch, this is true at Harmony Bends, this is true at Hillcrest Farm. Artificial OB is not part of the equation. The property itself does the work of creating the opportunities, if you make a mistake. It's a big thing for me, and this is one of the first places that I started to get this dialed in, that if somebody makes a small mistake, they're not severely punished. They should still have an opportunity to recover. That's one of the great things about traditional golf, and to me, it should be one of the great things about disc golf.
How do you balance designing a course that is designed for both MPO and FPO, given the very different needs that both those fields have?
That is a good question. And the honest answer is, until 2017, that was not something that we were able to address. When this facility first went in, it was kind of a first of its kind. We felt like we stretched the budget as far as we can go. And so for all those years, there was really only one set of tees. And we didn't get any FPO tees in at all until 2017 for the Pro Worlds. So the way I design, especially on the par 4s, it's really important to me to have a big, well-defined landing area for people to get to on their drives. Now, there will be better places to be within the landing area and relatively worse places to be within the landing area. But if you hit that landing area, I want to make sure that you have a good opportunity to get to the basket on your second shot. So the key for FPO or any other divisions where the players typically don't throw as far is to make sure that they can get to that same landing area so that they have the good looks on their second shot. And with the gold tees that we used for the first 10 years, a lot of those holes, that was really hard for them. And I'm very sensitive to that. I want to make sure that if anybody's competing on this course or any course that I'm associated with, that the challenges will fit their skill level. And typically on the par 4s, that means that from their tee, they've got a good, fair chance to get to the landing area. And from there, they're going to have good looks to get to the green.
How would you describe your course design philosophy more generally? And maybe as a corollary to that question, how has it changed since you put W.R. Jackson in the ground?
Well, I think, fairness is a big issue for me. Making, and that's a big issue. It's not just that all the gaps need to be the right width, or that those gaps need to be the right width from the tee. That's certainly a simple one. And we've all played courses where, how am I supposed to hit that gap from 300 feet away, right? So that kind of fairness is important. As I said, being able to recover from a small mistake is important. Anybody who knows anything about golf, and I know a lot of your listeners and watchers, probably recorded your coverage of the Silver Tour, Charlie, or they probably recorded the Masters so they could watch it later after they were watching the Silver Tour. So, but anybody who knows even a little bit about golf knows, that you can make a small mistake and be in the first cut, or a little more mistake and be in the second cut, or sometimes in a sand trap. But anytime you do that, you have a chance to make a great recovery shot from there and save your birdie or save your par, as the case may be. So that's a really important one for me. It's, the whole thing about, well, you made a little mistake, you missed the fairway by 6 inches, so you're on the wrong side of the rope. We're putting a stroke on your card and go throw again. It's really important to me to try to give people opportunities to recover. Also, it's always a balance of challenge and fun. Right, fun may not be as big a factor for a major event like this one, but it does come into play for everybody else. And as far as W.R. Jackson, this was out of the three pieces that we broke the property into. I had the flattest of the three, but I had the biggest of the three. So. And I had done, honestly, a lot of flat courses up until that point. So I knew, what it was like to have to work a little harder to make the holes interesting, to make the holes different from each other. So variety of widths, variety of shots, variety of options. Those are all big parts of it. And those are all things that I hope to incorporate into W.R. Jackson.
When you are designing courses these days, do you bring in professional players in order to have them be a part of that design process, test the course as it goes? How do you incorporate professional level players, if at all, in order when you design that course?
Well, that's a good question, and I do sometimes. As a matter of fact, I'll never forget the shot that George Smith made the first time we were testing hole 1 at Harmony Bends. Just out of the car, didn't even have a tee box to throw from, and he threw a full level pro shot. Exactly what I was expecting someone of that caliber to be able to throw. Generally, though, there isn't. There isn't somebody available, or I maybe, feel like I know what it is. Look, I study these players. I study the videos. I study the holes. I know what's worked and what hasn't. But if I ever have doubts, then absolutely I'll bring someone in and make sure we do that testing. But I think it's important for anybody who's doing higher level design courses to really have a good understanding of what the top players can do, what the regional players can do, because that's different, depending on who's going to be playing that course. And it keeps changing. The players get better and better, the discs change, and the type of lines people are throwing. These shots that fade so hard and the long skips that we see today, that didn't used to happen back in prior days. So I'm conscious of that on a lot of the courses now. And also just the fact that most people can go backhand and forehand. That's a huge difference, right? So there are shots that I'll ask a right-hander to make where maybe it has to finish hard to the right that we wouldn't have asked them to do 20 years ago because they couldn't do it with the discs they had. And maybe they still can't. James Conrad, asterisk. I love the fact that he's able to do just about everything with a backhand. I think he should be a role model for all new disc golfers. But the fact is, you have to be able to go both ways. And so to make a hole where a player has to finish hard right, and maybe it really encourages them to throw that forehand. That's important. So. Really need to keep up with what players are able to do and what the discs are able to do. Otherwise, you're not giving them the best possible course.
What do you think of the courses on the Disc Golf Pro Tour right now, as a general rule on the Elite Series?
I think there's a lot of great courses out there. I think, and I've said this enough times before, we're not breaking any ground. I'm just not a fan of the artificial OB. I always stood by the USDGC when it started, which had rope everywhere, but that was supposed to be a one-off event, right? That was supposed to be a disc golf analog for the U.S. Open in golf, which was more challenging and more punishing. And I thought in that case, having all that rope was something that was worth trying. I'm not a fan of the fact that it's crept into everywhere. As a matter of fact, my worry is that people will watch disc golf videos or disc golf on ESPN. They see all the out of bounds, the cart paths and whatever else, and think that's what disc golf is. And I actually had an experience recently with a guy who told me he had just got his 6-year-old playing disc golf, and the kid instantly went crazy for it. He wanted to play all the time. He talked about it all the time. He went to bed thinking about disc golf. And this guy came home from work one day, and his son said, Dad, I designed a course throughout the neighborhood. So this is a tee, and that's a basket, and this is a tee, and that's a basket, and that's OB, and that's OB, and that's OB. And I thought, my goodness, okay, if a 6-year-old thinks this is what disc golf should be, I think we could be heading down a better path. Now, all that being said, I don't ever judge any particular designer for the decisions that they make on these courses, because we don't know what they have to work with, right? We don't know what's allowed and what's not. We don't know if the property owner even lets them use the wooded areas, or if they're willing to. We don't know. So, but I do think it's much better when we give the top players the opportunity to recover and scramble, because they're so amazing at it. It's better for the players. It's better for the spectators. It's better for the people watching it, live or on video. And I think it's just better for the game. It's a lot of work, and I know sometimes it's hard to do, but I would just like to see us get to that place where we're not relying on rope to make the courses challenging.
One topic of discussion is that as putting continues to improve, especially on the MPO side, Circle 1 becomes almost a guarantee at the top level. And so something that we've discussed is making greens more difficult, and think of the fort maybe in Utah, where if your drive is a little bit short, you could still be within Circle 1, but be in so dense of woods that you can't actually even putt cleanly. What is your philosophy on using green design in order to make putting more challenging for players?
I love that question. It's a very tricky one. Whenever you're able to incorporate some slope, that is going to give you more opportunities to make it challenging. I do think, sometimes we've gone a little too far. I hate to see somebody, miss a putt by 2 inches and they hit the rim or something and they roll down the hill and they go OB. That's, as happened to Kevin Jones at the Portland Open last year. That's a tiny mistake that results in a huge penalty. So that per se, I don't think is the answer. The issue with trees, when you have any kind of trees near the green, and this goes back to what I was saying about fairness. Fairness sometimes is a matter of avoiding randomness, right? So 2 putts that are almost identical, one hits the basket and drops down, one hits the basket and rolls 50 feet, right? That is pretty random because those 2 putts were almost identical. When you have trees by the green, you can, if it's a single tree, you can have 2 shots that are pretty much identical. One misses on the wrong side and still gets a putt. One hits the tree and drops down, where they have a very difficult putt. So yes, you've added to the challenge, but you've also landed to the randomness. Another thing that I see that happens a lot with trees near the green is, I've seen so many videos where somebody throws a shot that's just still screaming by the time it gets to the basket. It's clearly going 50, 60 feet past the pin, and it hits a tree and drops down, and they get a 20, 30 foot putt. So it's a difficult solution to try to get to. But you're absolutely right. Circle one putts are too automatic. They're not fun for the player. They're not fun to watch. So what I try to focus on is, how do we make it difficult to get to circle one? How do we get to where, your approach or your drive getting to circle two is a good shot? And if you get to circle one, it's a great shot. And if you look at the statistics, I was looking at the 2019 Hall of Fame Classic, and there were only 2 holes where people got into circle one more than a third of the time in regulation. And I expect that number will be higher this week because it's more of an elite field, right? But that's kind of the point, right? If circle two means you made a good drive and you should be happy, and now you have to make the putt. It's not a gimme. There's going to be drama because the result is not known to everybody ahead of time. And if you really nail it, you're in circle one. That's the reward you get. As long as that's not happening too often, then we've got a hole that's interesting. So there are things that you can do on the green, absolutely. But to me, the bigger thing is to work in the fairway to make the approach shot or the drive trickier, so that you're just not seeing that many circle one drives. And I'm glad your question ended that way, because I was afraid you were going to go to smaller baskets. Tell me we're not going there today.
We've basically retired that topic on the Upshot.
Okay, good.
So we won't have to ask about that. One of the things, so the PDGA is selling approximately 400 tickets per day to spectate at the Champions Cup. That's the capacity that's possible at WR Jackson, with some VIP player, folks who get to follow along with the card through the woods, and other people who have to stay in the kind of the main gallery areas. That's not that many people. And we know that some other majors, USDGC, we have 2,000 to 3,000 people out on the final day. Last time we saw the European Open in 2019, there were 5,000 plus people on the course for the final round. How do we take woods courses and make them into spectator-friendly environments? Because you clearly follow what's going on, on the tour, and as I'm sure you've heard, we've had a trend away from these types of heavily wooded courses into more open spaces where you can put more people and you can get better cell access for the cameras, and it's easier to see. But as a result of that, you're getting a lot of artificial out of bounds lines in order to create the challenge necessary for these players who would otherwise just absolutely tear up wide open golf course type fairways. So is there a solution, John, to having a course like WR Jackson that is in the woods that still allows for you to have, let's say thousands of people able to spectate?
Absolutely. And there are several factors involved, but the bottom line answer is it's absolutely possible, and it's going to be happening soon. The first element is the venue design. And Dee, my wife and partner, and our CEO, who a lot of people, don't know about. They don't know her experience and her background and all her talents that she brings to bear. But trust me, she's doing amazing things for disc golf, and none of the things that we do would be happening without her. And one of the things that she's working on now is the design of the overall venue, because, other than a few tournaments 3-4 years ago, you couldn't pay people to go watch disc golf, and now they're paying us to go watch disc golf, right? And I assure you, in 2007, even though we made these fairways at W.R. Jackson that were wider than anything we'd ever seen, we weren't really envisioning the kind of galleries that you're talking about now. So we are aware of that now. We're ready for that to continue growing. And so that has to go into the design of the venue itself, not just the course. How do you get spectators around? Where do you set up viewing areas? How is all that going to work? So when that's part of the whole plan from the very beginning, that's where you want to be. And we've already got a handful of projects where the property owner wants to host that kind of event. They do have a wooded environment, and we're going to make it happen. So number one, you have to be cognizant going in. Number two is when you look at these wooded courses, and, you know, a typical hole at W. Jackson has, I don't know how many hundreds of trees running down the right side and how many hundreds of trees running down the left side, but they don't all define the shot, right? The number of trees that are really critical, that force you to go this way or that way, that punish you a little bit if you miss it, that number is actually a small percentage of the total number. So one of the things that I'm working on is finding ways that we can keep the trees that really define the shot, not just, you know, what the players have to execute, but what happens if they make a mistake, the number of trees that we need to do that. And if somebody says, I want to accommodate as many spectators as possible, then we don't, you know, we're able to start taking out trees that are not critical to the design if we want to create areas for people to stand and watch. Another thing is, I think one of the things that happens in disc golf, more so in traditional golf, is we'll have dog legs with much sharper angles. So that will allow you to set people up to view at the end of the drive, right? So they're looking back at the drive, they see the players the whole way, they see the disc the whole way, and they're at the dog leg, which maybe is a 30 to 45 or maybe sometimes 60-degree turn, and we can set them up there knowing that all the drives are going to finish in front of them or turn around the corner, and they'll have a full-on view of everything that's happening on that drive. Just as you might have spectators behind the green that can see the whole approach. So there are things we can do that. It's been conventional wisdom for so long that, you know, woods golf doesn't look good on TV, which I think we've disproven, and woods golf can accommodate a lot of players, which I think we're also about to disprove, right? And I'm imagining, I looked at a property a couple weeks ago where there's a great drive down by the water on the edge of the lake, and you only need 2, 3, 4 trees by the tee to tell the player where the player needs to go and direct the shot. But everything else can be open, and you can have hundreds of people back there who can see everything. It's just those few trees that are relevant to the player, and everybody else has a great look at what's going on. So absolutely, we can do it. We are going to do it. We've already started doing it, and it's an exciting development. I mean, things have changed so much in the last 3-4 years, and you know, if you don't mind me saying so, thank you, Todd, for rescuing the DGPT, which was, honestly about to go under. And he bought the tour, and he didn't need to do that, and he got it on the right track, and he hired Jeff Spring and the right people. And the things that are happening today probably would have happened eventually, but they wouldn't have happened this quickly. We wouldn't have been where we are now. And let's be fair and give credit to Steve for getting it all started. But, the DGPT has just changed everything. Galleries are just part of it. All these sponsorships, player sponsorships, tournament sponsorships, everything used to be video rights, right? We used to, 3-4 years ago, we had to pay people to come video the tournament. Now the Jomez is paying the tour, right? which we knew was going to happen. It was just a matter of when, and everything that used to be measured in tens of thousands of dollars is measured in hundreds of thousands and millions now. So, it's time for us to change with the time. And my job and Dee's job is to make sure that the venues are ready for what's happening now and what's going to be coming next.
So WR Jackson isn't just hosting any tournament this year. It's hosting the Champions Cup, our first major and the new major. We've talked a lot about it on the show, but in your opinion, what is it that makes a tournament a major and gives it that legitimacy needed to really back up the M that's going to be next to the winner's title?
Well, that's a great question. I think, first of all, there's a prestige to the event that everybody has to recognize, right? Everybody has always recognized, going back to the 80s, the World Championships, that's the one. And at some point when we got the USDGC, that was another one. And, some people thought the USDGC was more prestigious. Some people still thought it was Worlds, but there has to be that agreement throughout the industry that this is, one of the ones that everybody's going to focus on. We know the sponsors are going to be there. We know the biggest players are going to be there. That's what goes into making it a major. But of course, the event has to earn that prestige with the quality of the course, the quality of the tournament directorship, the quality of the venue overall. All those things have to go into it. So I'm glad that the PDJ decided to add a fourth major. I'm glad that they're doing it at WR Jackson. I think people generally agree that course and that venue have earned that right. And they can say, this is one of the big ones. And, they got Bushnell involved, which is fantastic. And everything lines up. I certainly haven't heard anybody say this, there's anything about this event that doesn't deserve to be a major. I've only heard people excited about it and looking forward to it.
Do you feel that the toboggan course where the Great Lakes Open is hosted and the host of next year's Champion Cup is a course that holds up this prestige that you think WR Jackson sets?
Well, I don't want to compare the two courses head to head. It's been since Worlds was there that I've even been at Toboggan, but certainly the spectacularness of the course and the fact that it's hilly and it strikes me as being fair and challenging. But yeah, other than that, I'm not really in a position to put the two head to head, but I certainly have no reason to say that Toboggan is not worthy of hosting that event.
What would you say the signature hole is at WR Jackson as fans get ready to watch the coverage this week?
Wow. Well, it depends on what you like. That's a tough one. For me, I'm not sure there's one that really stands out. My goal is always to make every hole as good as it can be. And part of that is, it has to contribute to the whole. So I don't like slackers. If I feel like a hole isn't measuring up, I'll go back and work on it quite a bit. So I don't know that one really stands out. There are a couple that are really kind of typify what the experience is, and that I'm happy with how they're playing and how people are enjoying it. But yeah, I'm not sure there's one that I would really pick. And I'm happy for every individual person to pick their own signature hole.
All right. Last question for you. You've designed over 100 courses now? Is that right?
About 130 solo designs now. Yeah.
That's amazing. Either from one of the courses that you've designed or one that you're working on now, a project you're working on now, what's the next John Houck course we're going to see with a major, not necessarily a major championship, but an Elite Series stop or a major coming soon, if you had to guess?
Well, look, who gets a major, who gets a series stop is out of my hands. My job is to make the best courses I can. And even since I've started working on some of the courses now, the standards for what it takes to be part of it, part of the Elite Tour have changed. We just came through a period of decades where the two biggest factors were how much sponsorship do you have and how good is your staff. And now course quality is finally becoming a big part of the equation. So let me just say, I've got several courses that I'm working on now that I think are as good as anything I've ever done. Agape Farm in Pennsylvania is a wonderful course. Mammoth Cave at Hickory Cabins in Kentucky is going to be a great course. We haven't officially announced it, but I'll go ahead and say Tomashinga in Kansas, unbelievable property. That's going to be a great course. And I would love to see any of those on there. Shaver Park in Iowa coming up. Hillcrest Gold is going to debut at the Canadian National Championships this year. And we've just started, there's a couple others where we're just starting negotiations. Some of which are closer to bigger metropolitan areas, which I think is, more and more going to be a factor of it. So, God, I hope I'm not forgetting one that's opening this year. Look on our website. There's a list of courses opening this year. But I have to say, I'm very blessed to be able to do what I do. I'm very blessed to have the kind of projects that we've been able to work with. I'm so blessed to have a wife and business partner who makes this all possible, because it's not me. She had the vision for a course design business, and she's seen it through, and she's working on incredible things now. So I'm not going to give you a specific name of a venue, but take a look at the front page of the website, see if I forgot anything, and stay tuned, because let me just say this. I've had a vision for what the next level of course design could be, and we are now getting the opportunities for me to work out that vision. And by the way, I have a vision for what comes after that. So stay tuned. I'll leave it at that.
All right. Fantastic. Well, you can check out John's website. It's houckdesign.com, HOUCK design.com. If people want to get in touch with you, is the website the best way for them to do that?
Website is great. Facebook page, John Houck, Houck Design. Email is contact@Houck Design. Those are all great ways to get in touch. And look, let me just say, I really appreciate what you guys are doing too. You do a great job. I'm so glad that Ultiworld is out there and that they're, paying such great attention and doing such a great service to disc golf. So it's a real pleasure for me to be here with you guys, and thanks for everything that you're doing.
Well, thank you, John. We appreciate you giving us some time. John Houck of Houck Design with us here on the Upshot Interview Series. Appreciate it, John.
Thank you, guys. It's been great.